Where did Sanctus come from?
I had a failed venture out of university. Didn't really reflect or grieve that, but I was really impacted. When I was living in London, I started to struggle with my mental health for the first time, basically, and I just did not know what to do, where to go, who to talk to.
Let's talk about your exit of Sanctus and walking away. How did it feel?
Just really underwhelming. I think it's time to leave Slack. So I just literally left Slack.
You've had a difficult couple of years. I'll let you put it into your own words.
Where we lost a baby, basically. That's the sort of the tip of the iceberg. The man, or the non-birth partner, in my case me, the dad, is an afterthought.
Today I'm joined by James Routledge, someone who knows all too well the highs and lows of leadership. He co-founded Sanctus, a mental health coaching business, scaled it to over 2 million of revenue, had over 100 clients before stepping away in 2022. He's also the author of Mental Health at Work and has spent the last few years mentoring founders. But today, we're going to be talking about a real journey behind that, the identity when it shifts, the hard decisions and the personal impact. James, welcome to Leaders in Disguise. Thanks for coming along. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks for having me.
It's great to finally get to talk to you about so much, and I don't know how we're going to do it.
There's a lot to dig into.
There is a lot. I'm looking at my clock, and I'm going to try and keep on time today because you've had such a wide-ranging career at a young age still, and I make myself sound really old when I say that. We are going to jump into some difficult topics today, and I know you've already talked about that with me, and we've talked off mic, and I think it's going to be challenging for some of the people that listen to this today, and we'll put some warnings for any trigger warnings for people that come on and want to join in. But I think it's going to be a really interesting story. May we start with Sanctus?
Yeah,
because it's been a huge part of your career and a huge success. Where did Sanctus come from? Well,
I'd always been entrepreneurial since I left university. So I'd fallen into the world of startups. I had a failed venture out of university that I shut down when I was 24. Didn't really reflect or grieve that. I kind of ran off and just kind of ran away from it. But I was really impacted, but too young to understand how to deal with that. And when I moved down to London, and then when I was living in London, I started to struggle with my mental health for the first time, basically. And I just did not know what to do, where to go, who to talk to. I knew nothing about mental health. I knew nothing about my own mental health. At that time in my life, I was pretty unemotional. You know, my idea of both being a man or a young man and of leadership was just bottle it all up, be a rock, keep calm, carry on. And it started to sort of explode out of me. And I just began opening up. Basically, I just started writing, sharing, talking about mental health specifically in the startup ecosystem, which I was a part of. And the messages I was sharing just really began resonating, basically. I was saying stuff that now is still needed, but we're much more aware of. You know, we all have mental health. Let's treat our mental health like we do our physical health. Be proactive. Don't just wait and let things bubble up until you burn out. Or, you know, don't just respond to difficult things that happen in your life. You know, start understanding yourself now. Yeah, and it took off. Ended up building a really impactful brand and business that supported thousands of people in the workplace, basically, one-to-one with their mental health, and really contributed to culture change around mental health in the last, say, 7 years and longer. So I'm really proud of it. Very defining for me and defined me for a long time. You know, for a long time I was the mental health guy. That was me. I was Mr. Sanctus, wearing my t-shirt, wearing my uniform all the time. And I loved it. Found it really stressful as well. But in general, I loved it and really proud of the impacts we were able to have.
as a fellow business owner, founder, and what I went through over the last 15, 16 years that I had a business, one of the things that just stands out for me hearing you is talking about that, what I describe as a loss of identity, that we become the business and we forget that we are Gary and James still. How did you manage that? Did you fail at that? Was that something you were able to
I think the truth is, like at the start, it really served me. Being all in on mental health really served me as a founder, leader, influencer. It meant that I really built a niche basically around that topic. There was definitely a period I felt sort of 2016, 2017 in that London tech startup circle. My name and the Sanctus brand was synonymous with mental health. And now we see a lot of that. You get a lot of marketing, social media experts will say, own a word, vulnerability, Brené Brown. People own words. And I felt like I claimed my space in mental health for that period. So strategically, it really worked. Personally, it really worked as well. I grew a lot, but it also became exhausting, and it did become quite limiting. Like as much as mental health is very pervasive, I have more interests than just mental health.
Yeah.
And it got to a point a few years in when we were scaling, and I became quite stressed, and I was very conscious of how I was feeling at that point because of the work I'd done and the work I was in. And when I went to therapy and I sort of wanted to explore that, really it was because if you looked at a pie chart of me, there was sort of, and I feel bad saying this now, but there was 10-15% my relationship, 5% my mates, 5% my family, and the rest was work, really. And yes, work was purposeful and impactful and it was important, it was mental health, but still work. Fundamentally, whether it's a social mission or not, it still work. So it took up a huge part of my identity. And then that actually ironically meant that I wasn't actually that well resourced, because then when work wasn't going well or work was stressful, I was existentially stressed. So some of the initial work I did on myself was to just kind of dismantle myself a little bit, put myself back together again, and really round myself out. And that certainly helped. That just helped me run that business as a founder and be a leader, because it meant that I did have other interests. I started to really love hiking, being outdoors. Just other stuff, running. Even I remember going to therapy and talking to him about like, oh, I'm nervous to like cycle to work. Crazy. It's just because that was something new. That was everything I ever did had to be related to my performance at work. So when I then had to think about other things, I found it quite hard, or other parts of myself.
Did you find that the pressure of a mental health business, and it's something I can relate to again, and it's that mental health business that you have, is that the pressure is on as you as a leader, that you need to have your mental health in check more than anybody else?
I felt like I had to be some sort of saint a little bit. I had to be this sort of martyr with perfectly enlightened mental health, which is obviously too much pressure to put on yourself. So there was a little bit of that. I was just really attached to the business as well. I was really attached because the lines between the brand and the business and me were very blurred. I was really, really connected. And again, that provided the business with a lot and the brand with a lot, and was really powerful. And it was fundamentally, to be honest, it was unsustainable, because it meant that, the business relied on me. I relied on it. We were sort of codependent. And it was actually pretty unhealthy in the end. So as much as we were doing a good thing, actually, for me, the business gave me a lot and it took a lot away from me.
I'm hearing it as that journey really is going from the guy that had a tech startup business that you you mentioned that you were struggling with your mental health, and then you thought, actually, I need to do something here. It was very purpose driven, to then ended up actually doing well, but then ended up being detrimental to your mental health by the end of it. Is that ironic?
I think just because it was mental health didn't mean I was any different than any other startup founder. Actually, in the end, maybe I was able to say, "Oh, I'm doing a mental health thing. Look how great I am." Yeah. But actually, I was probably just as stressed as anyone building a bank or a insurance business or a marketing agency. It was exactly the same, really. In the end, I did a lot more coaching, a lot more therapy, a lot of work on myself to understand the patterns and behaviors I was getting myself into. But to be honest, I was a little bit, do as I say, don't do as I do. In the end, I was pretty burnt out taking the business through COVID, and yeah, I was just burned out.
One of those steps that I was reading through some of the notes ahead of today, and one of the notes I saw was did you bring a CEO into the business and change the dynamic?
I think the truth is with that one, on reflection, I was looking for a silver bullet, and that next level, sort of, let's say going from 2 to 10 million, it's just a whole different ballgame. And I think I could see that mountain ahead. And not only was I burned out from the mountain we'd already climbed, I was looking ahead thinking, oh gosh, I don't know if I've got it in me for that. So my confidence was I was doubting myself possibly.
Yeah.
And also I was just thinking, God, do I fancy that? Do I fancy that? So I saw hiring a CEO as a little bit of a silver bullet. I wanted to do it at the time, and I'm not saying it was a bad decision. And, Chris, who we hired, was a phenomenal operator. I just look back and I think I was a little bit desperate, actually. And, none of us make good decisions when we're in that place. And I think back now and I think, you know what, actually, if I'd have taken 2 months off, a month off, if I'd have really, actually sort of rested, would I've made a different decision? And I don't know. So it doesn't really matter now. But I think I speak to a lot of founders now who actually get to about a similar stage, and they think a similar thing, like, oh, could we hire an MD? Could we hire a CEO? And in some cases, yes, it's a great decision and it works. In other cases, I think it's a way of avoiding the pain of the next part of that journey. And in other cases, it's a symptom of just being exhausted.
I guess, let's talk through the other different options that people can go down, so they can bring non-execs in. So that's something that many companies would do.
Well, you can do what you want.
Yeah.
If you start a business, you can do what you want. You can say to everyone, we're closed. We're closed for a month.
Yeah.
We're closed. I'm working 4 days a week. You're all working 5, but I've built this from the ground. I'm going to work 4. What you can do what you want. You can maneuver your role so that you only work on certain things. There's just so much. There's so much that you can do. But actually, funnily enough, I think as a founder, sometimes you feel like you don't have many options.
Yeah.
Like my world felt quite small. I felt like a bit trapped, which is a symptom of feeling quite scarce. And if you're scarce on time and if you're scarce on energy, you're not thinking big. And I wasn't, I don't think, actually. I wasn't thinking as big and as broad and as grand as I could. And I just thought, tired, need help, don't know how I'm going to do this next phase, hire a CEO, And like I said, look, I don't really regret it. It is what it is. But I look back now and I wish I maybe was a little bit more grounded as I was making those kind of decisions. And I really... I really thought about actually that I could do it.
Let's turn this into a lesson, because people will be sitting, listening, driving their cars, watching on TV. We've got some, including my own mother, that watches on YouTube. I'm very impressed. Hi, Mum. I don't often give shout outs to my mother, but hey, why not? 42-year-old man, I can say hi to my mum, can't I?
Yeah, hi, Mum.
So let's turn it into a lesson then for people that are listening and saying, actually, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about leaving. So, of course, straight away I'm going, what's your exit strategy? Are people thinking about this in advance? It would have been great if you'd planned it in that rational place.
It's just
never easy.
To me, it's just linked to the mission of what you're doing. Like, you know, if you're a leader and you're feeling burned out and exhausted, and you're feeling like you need a way out, then that might be the answer. An exit, a CEO, a board role may well be the answer, but also the lesson is to really check in with how you're feeling. You know, really, really check in. Like, what's your energy like? Is your energy 1 out of 10? Mine was probably 1 out of 10.
Really?
And, you know, if your energy's 1 out of 10, get it to 6 or 7 out of 10, and then make some decisions.
It's really hard though, isn't it? Just talking more generally about business, because when you're feeling like that, no matter whether you're in Sanctus or Joe Bloggs Limited engineering down the road, is that just trying to think rationally and take yourself out, I think is a really
difficult.
Good...
If you're caught in that whirlwind of stress, running a business,
that
or
fight or flight moment.
Yeah, you're in fight. Yeah, exactly. It is hard. And I always feel like founders need more support around them than they think, like a lot more. I thought I had a decent amount of support around me, but I look back and I could have doubled it, you know. Great co-founder relationship, tick. Me and my co-founder had a co-founder coach, tick. So that's really good. I had a coach myself, tick. We could have had a better board structure, I think. That would have been really good. Yeah, we could have just had more. Like, I just think as much as possible. What we're all trying to do is very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult to build businesses and scale them.
You'd mentioned your co-founder. Was your co-founder on board with this idea of let's bring an MD on?
Yeah, we both were. I think the truth is we were both young and didn't really know what to do. So bringing a CEO who knew a bit more than us sounded like a really good idea. Yeah, whether that was naive or not, but we were definitely all for it.
I'm going to move on from Sanctus because I feel like you've lived in that world for a long time. In a moment, if it's okay, I want to mention the book though, if that's okay, because I feel like if we don't mention it, we're going to kick ourselves afterwards. And you talked about being Mr. Sanctus, this big brand, and going out there. You signed a deal with Penguin, a brand that most of us know from childhood, and now a huge, many multinational, multi-brand business that they've got. How on earth does somebody in a successful business come across a publisher to release a book in mental health?
Well, I'd been writing about mental health very prolifically. Is that the word? Yeah, prolifically. For 7 years. And I'm talking multiple times a day. That's, that to that level. So I was already writing a lot about mental health. I already had a bit of an audience and a following that I'd built up through my own storytelling and through Sanctus. So Penguin were going to write a book. They wanted to commission a book on mental health at work, and they reached out to me basically. So I sort of tell that honestly, because it wasn't this exciting story really. I got an email from Penguin one day that said, do you want to write a book about mental health at work? I emailed them back saying, yeah, that'd be great. They said, okay, give us a proposal. I said, well, this is how I'd do it. And then they said, yeah. So it was that simple really. And I loved it. I loved the process of writing a book. I procrastinated on it for a long time. Yeah. Brought up feelings of, am I credible? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychotherapist. But it allowed me to just recount all the stories and all the experience I had in mental health in the workplace and put it into one place. So really pleased with it. To be honest, and I don't say this a lot, but I forget about it all the time. I forget that I've done it. You know, it's not like I've brought a copy here for you today and I'm waving it on camera. I often forget, because I think the truth is for me, and this is what I don't talk about a lot, is a lot of founders get book deals, actually. It's not that uncommon these days for someone to have written a book. Let's be honest. Culturally, it still holds a lot of weight. If I'm an author, it's cool, or you've got the book in your hand, especially if it's published. Even if it's self-published, though, there's a lot of weight behind just saying, you know what, I've written something, I've written a book here and you can hold it. There's a lot of weight in that, but it's not uncommon. It's not that uncommon. You have Love Island influencers that have written books these days, so it's not that uncommon. And for me, there was part of me that thought, what I need to do is I write this book and I use this book then to grow my personal brands, and I grow with the book. I do more keynotes, I become an expert. But the truth is, for me, like, as I was writing the book, my passion for the industry was actually declining. For me, writing the book about mental health at work, I almost saw it as a wrapping up exercise. I almost saw it as, I'm writing everything I've learned here, and I've written the book on it. Literally, I've written the book
James'
on it.
greatest hits.
Yeah, I've written the book on it. This is my album. This is what I know. It's everything I know, and it's not perfect. It's really not perfect. Honestly, I'm the first to say about my book, Mental Health at Work, it's decent. I would say it's decent, but it's not perfect. Mental health is evolving. So best practice, the conversations we need to have. There's not much in my book about diversity, for example. And at the time, or remote working, because I wrote it before. So there's loads of things now that have started to happen in the world that impact mental health. But I just don't say it a lot, but I think it's important to just break down this misconception perhaps of, if you write a book, you're some level of, and it's a really amazing milestone.
Yeah.
But it's not everything.
Let's talk about your exit of Sanctus and walking away. How did it feel? Talk to me about the day that you signed a dotted line and walked away from Sanctus.
Just really underwhelming. Like, it was really, really stressful in the lead up. The deal was 50-50 on off, coming up to Christmas, classic. Closed on like the last day before Christmas, the Friday before Christmas, which I think happens all the time. And then, January, sort of got back on my laptop and spoke to our CEO at the time, and we weren't in the office at that point. So it was basically, I think it's time to leave Slack. So I just literally left Slack.
We're going to dive into something a little bit light now before we go into something a bit heavier. And I appreciate we said that we might just give people a warning. It's to do with grief and baby loss, etc. for people that want to tune out. I'm just going to break it up a little bit. I've got some quick fire questions if I can ask you, see where we get to very quickly. You've published your own book. What's, other than your own, what's the one book that people need to be reading that you'd recommend right now? That your favourite book? It doesn't have to be it can be J.K. Rowling if you really want.
I mean, you're asking a book lover that.
I know.
It's an impossible task. I mainly read fiction, so I know in a lot of sort of business circles people love non-fiction, but I mainly read fiction. I just, honestly, it's a cop-out answer, but any fiction book for me is an amazing release, escape, way to relax, way to empathize, a way to travel, literally, in terms of traveling in, how you can connect to another culture, another story, another person. Yes, any fiction book. I love Lord of the Rings. I'll go with Lord of the Rings.
So
I love
big
it.
books then.
Yeah, The Hobbit, or start with The Hobbit and move on. I think Lord of the Rings is such an amazing hero's journey for anyone creative and imaginative. I think it's a phenomenal work of creativity, to be honest.
Next question for you. I'm sure you've adopted your own leadership style, or perhaps varied over the years. What is the one person that sticks out in your mind that has been that inspiration for your leadership style? Would you say?
I always struggle with like role models for sort of leaders. I love any founder. Any founder, I love finding out their story, their origin story, and I'm inspired by anyone that goes on that journey.
Anyone
I love
personally, perhaps.
There's two people who I really like. They both own football clubs. So Jason Stockwood is the owner of Grimsby Town Football Club. He was our chair at Sanctus. He was the CEO of an online insurance business called Simply Business. Yeah. Just a brilliant leader. And then I just love the fact that he's turning that football club into a vehicle for social change in the area. And then Carol Shanahan is the owner of Port Vale. in Stoke, in Burslem, and she's doing the same. And she's a great entrepreneur in her own right, as founder of Synectic Solutions, big IT business. But yeah, I just love that. I love that they're using clubs and communities to sort of transform the areas that they're in, and I just find it really fascinating that can be done. Yeah, and I know that running a football club's a labour of love, so I'm just impressed.
James, I'm going to dive into a difficult topic. So during this exit and all of the Mr. Stoke-on-Trent, you've had a difficult couple of years. I'll let you put it into your own words. What's happened? And
last 6 months really. I mean, the whole exit and transition period has been challenging, but I wouldn't describe it as that difficult. But compared to what we've been through in the last 6 months, where we lost a baby, basically, that's the sort of the tip of the iceberg. Started trying for a baby, got pregnant quite quickly, and then I think it was sort of May last year when we found out Sarah was pregnant. Obviously, really, June, really excited, happy, starting to think about what life was going to be. This new version of life, new identity as well for me, for both of us. Thinking about just everything, life, where we might live, school, just the future, and getting like involved in that idea basically. And it brought loads of feelings for me. I'll be honest, like when I first realised Sarah was pregnant, I was overwhelmed. I was like, I know I want this, but bloody hell, like, didn't think it would happen this quickly, or like, oh God, it's actually happening. And I was scared. Like, I was delighted at the same time, and I was also thinking, bloody hell, like, I'm going to be a dad. Like, what does that mean for me?
You've done some serious stuff, like building businesses and
but
millions of pounds and
employees. But thinking about just thinking about really someone else's life, and like actually creating that like safe container for them, and giving them like safety and love, and thinking about money a lot. So it brought up a lot, which I think it does for any prospective parent. And then all going well until we went to the 20-week scan in October, where, I mean, to be honest, I walked into that pretty laid back. I was actually a bit distracted, to be honest. I was on my emails and I was chatting about some stuff, or trying to do some work stuff. And I just saw it as, for me, I just thought the 20-week scan was the scan where you tell them if you want to know the gender or not. That's kind of all I really thought about. It's all I'd really heard of. I mean, in general, pregnancy was a huge learning curve for me, and I think it is for a lot of men. As I notice, from everything from ovulation all the way through to how a woman's body changes and what's actually going on it's a huge learning curve. So at the 20-week scan, what I've since found out is that's actually known as either the anomaly scan or the detailed scan. It's where the sonographer can find out in a lot more detail the state of the baby's health. And our baby was found to have some major issues. So, our world just turned in that moment really quickly. The sonographer said, I found a lot of problems with your baby. That was the line. That just kind of, it was like being in a one of those orbs with the snow falling. It was like everything just turns upside down, and I just felt like the walls were caving in, and I was just falling through this, just falling in free fall, because again, everything that I'd had in my mind of what was to come just stopped in that moment. That next weekend we were going to go and buy a pram and sort the nursery out, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, that's gone. So it was like walking through a kind of glass door and going into a different world. And it was quite obvious from the tone and from the tears, even of the sonographer, that we were going to lose the baby. It wasn't. There were still other things we had to do, but I could feel it in that moment. And we then had this very strange period of still being pregnant, but knowing that it wasn't going to be right is the only kind of way to say it. If the baby did get to full term, it was sort of really unlikely to survive. Heart was in the wrong place. Just lots of major health issues, not minor, major. That weren't. And it's a difficult phrase to say, weren't compatible with life. That's the phrase kind of that gets used. And after speaking to people, doctors and medical professionals, helplines and charities, we then realised that we'd have to not just lose our baby, but end the pregnancy ourselves and sort of make that decision. And it's an area of baby loss that isn't that well known. It's abbreviated to TFMR, which is termination for medical reasons. And it happens a lot because of that 20-week scan. A lot of families find out news about their baby not being well and have to make decisions as a family of what they want to do for the baby. Do they want to maybe risk it? Do they want to have more tests? How viable? What condition is that? There's loads of things that can happen there. So, but it's not that well spoken about because of how difficult I think the decision is and some of the stigma that comes with termination. So, we then had to go through that basically, which was just hell. I can't really say it in any other way. Just no other way of saying it. Just pure hell to actually have to deliver a baby that isn't gonna live is extremely cruel. Extremely cruel. To actually have to go through labour for that is really, really difficult. And I had to really just watch my wife do something that I don't think anyone, should ever have to do, which was uncomfortable, as to say the least, to witness, but worse to feel helpless that, you're a partnership, but you can't help. And it's kind of feels unfair that, again, you're a partnership, but one person has to do a lot more heavy lifting than the other. And then so we met our baby, but they weren't. Teddy wasn't alive, and we kind of we had to say hello and goodbye basically over the course of a few days. And the last few months has just been coming to terms.
Forgive me for asking this context, I guess in context of the podcast as well, and you said that you were the person that was emailing and probably on Slack and chatting away in that room, and it's suddenly changing. Was there a mask that you wore with colleagues, or were you open with them from the start of what was happening? And
I think what was I work for myself, and in the time that it's happened, I wasn't running a business. Like I didn't have a team, or I was kind of a bit isolated in that perspective. So I didn't have the let's say awkwardness of having to go into an office and say this is what's happened, or letting them know. I mean, there are people I work with regularly.
Do you think it would have been harder being in that business of that? Is it almost?
Well, I think if I was running something that was was a stressful situation in itself, I can't really imagine. But to be honest, everything else in life pales in insignificance. So to be honest, anyone I worked with, I just said, this is going on. I'll see you when I see you. Yeah. Literally, I'll see you when I see you, which is a privilege of mine because I work for myself. I mean, I've spoken to men that have gone through this and were back to work in 2 weeks. You know, which
I think statutory is that like,
yeah, I mean, there's no guidelines because there's maybe you're in a business that's got some sort of policy about grief. You're not technically entitled to paternity leave. So it's a really grey spot. So, you know, I was privileged in the sense that I have the freedom of working for myself, that I could do kind of what I wanted, basically, which was nothing. You know, what I wanted to do was down tools, be with Sarah, focus on her recovery, focus on grieving, focus on our family. That's what I was able to afford myself for 3 months, actually. I mean, I didn't work for 3 months. I took from October when it happens to January. I was off completely. And then that's what I needed. But I could give that to myself. So it was I'm not saying the process has been easy for me. That was quite easy for me because let's say I work with 6 or 7 people, just let them all know this has happened. You're not going to see me.
I think you touch on a point, is that absolutely Sarah is a huge role to play in this, but downplaying your role as a man and the masculinity that comes with, I don't know, society expectations shouldn't be downplayed. I guess is that the phrase I'm looking for?
It's hard. It's hard because in this scenario, comparing what like I had to do to what the mother has to do, it is genuinely incomparable. You just stand, you just stand in absolute awe of what women are capable of, and mothers are capable of. It's just genuinely awe-inspiring. So in that sense, I'm kind of happy to feel insignificant. Like it's sort of like happy to, raise someone else and just let the spotlight shine absolutely where it should. Yeah. So and like I've got no sort of ego in that. No desire for limelight or it's if I'm like, yes, priority number one. Yeah. Women and children go first. Comfortably, easy, simple. And having said all of that, which I genuinely mean, and what's left in that is then me. Yeah. And my feelings and how I feel. And the truth is they are not a priority. They're not. And that's okay. And I can live with that. And I have to deal with it. And that's hard. It is hard. It is hard. The truth is in a situation like we've been through, when you're losing a baby and it's the mother that's going to have to go through something incredibly traumatic, the man, or the non-birth partner, in my case me, the dad, is an afterthought. An afterthought. How are you? How are you? How are you? Oh, and are you all right? You're an afterthought. So yeah, it's difficult because, like, as well, I just want to do stuff. I just want to do, and it's such a typical male trait, and men talk about it all the time. Just wanted to do stuff, problem solve, do things. And I've had nothing to do. Like, there's not really been much I could do. I can't give birth. I can't do anything. I can't make the pain that my wife is going through go away. I can't bring back our baby. I can't do anything. So this helplessness, I think that's really challenging to come to terms with.
And I'm trying to find a balance here, and I think this is what perhaps we both are, because you're absolutely right, and I 1,000,000% agree with everything that you're saying there. And I'm still trying. It's hard. I'm trying to find a balance of it. So hopefully, I've said that enough for people to understand that I'm trying to get this conversation on the right side.
I know that if I was to drink my own Kool-Aid, I have supported myself through this, and I have taken up space and talked about how I feel. I have done that, so it's not like I've completely bottled it all in, but I can understand why a lot of men do that in these situations, because, we talk about miscarriage and baby loss much more now as a society, but I don't really think we acknowledge the fact that men go through that. It's talk, we know that, of course, yes, women, we don't talk about men going through it. And I think I hear the same story over and over again. I struggle to get my husband to talk about it. I struggle to get my husband to talk about it. And I do think one part of that is men assuming the role of, well, you went through something way worse than me. It didn't happen to me. Nothing happened to my body. It happened to you. And I think it's okay for us as men to say, look, nothing happened to my body. Nothing happened to my hips or my pelvis. I didn't have anything. I didn't have to deliver a baby. I didn't have to go through something quite violating and traumatic. Something happened to my mind, though.
Yeah.
Big time. Something very traumatic happened to my mind. I've lost a baby still. I lost this vision of what I thought I was going to have. I lost a child. So that's still happened to me. So I think as men, dads, I think it's okay to acknowledge, yes, what our partners, women, go through in this like area, baby loss is worse. It is worse. And what we've gone through is also extremely difficult, and we need to talk about it.
I wonder, we can't speak for Sarah. We can make a little bit of a guess. I'm wondering from her point of view, having that comfort that you're okay, that, I appreciate we're talking about heterosexual relationships, and it's going to be different in lots of scenarios, but let's stick to that one because of where we're at. That actually knowing that you're okay, the male in that relationship is okay, I'm sure will give her peace of mind, and that give us that tiny bit of comfort that she needs to know that you're okay. And it's important.
I think in any good relationship, you both got to look after yourselves. You both got to look after yourselves. And I'm definitely pretty good at like talking and opening up. I've got a background in it. So I knew I needed to do that, and I have done that throughout the whole process. And I've been just really conscious of the different dynamics. I think though sometimes as well in life, some things nothing can prepare you for.
You become quite passionate. I know we've been talking off mic and before today about, or briefly before today, about you've started to see that conversation needs to be had more. It's great. We're seeing lots of men's groups that are being set up. I think Andy's Man Club being the one that I've known sort of nationally that are opening more and more. I've seen social prescribers referring men going to those. Okay, that from my experience, I mentioned this to you because I've recently been supporting Facial Palsy UK. Those that know, I had facial palsy, Bell's palsy when I was 18. We've been trying to get more men not only to access support, but just to come on the support calls. And they don't, they might look at the website, but you can't really tell them. Google can't tell whether it's men or women that are coming on the website. But from stereotypically, men, we don't tend to go out and get that support as much as we should do.
Well, so in this,
you've seen.
So in this scenario, the charities that we reached out to, straight away we were told, yes, we do have these men's groups, but they're not that well attended. So sort of straight away, and they did exist. And I spoke to another man who'd been through it, who was like a volunteer. So, that men are out there, absolutely willing to share and talk and connect and help each other. It's just not as common. It's just not as common, and it's hard to find, and you have to be a little bit more proactive. Thankfully, I've been quite proactive to find it. I'm sending broadcast WhatsApp messages to my mates. I'm voice noting them. I'm actively seeking help because I know I need it, and I know it's not weak to ask for help. And I've cultivated over years a relationship with my mates where we talk like that. Yeah. So it's not weird for them to reach out to me and say, mate, like, how you doing? Send me love hearts on WhatsApp. That's not weird because we do that because that's me and that's our relationship. But in general, when it comes to men's mental health and men's health broadly, if I look at how far we've moved in the last 10 years, not that far. if we're really honest with ourselves, and I'm not saying men haven't changed at all, because I actually see men have changed quite a lot. The men I know, young men I know, way more into their health, drinking less, more open-minded. So loads of movement, and I still feel like there's quite a long way to go. And I think we can do a lot better in supporting men.
For people that are listening, whether they've got friends, whether they are men listening and resonating and thinking, what do I do? Or it might be wives of people that have experienced loss, baby loss like you, like Sarah has. What in your opinion, do we need to be doing to engage men and creating an environment where they are able to, or is it not as simple as that?
I mean, nothing simple, but I think it is as simple as, especially the men that are willing to lead and be advocates for whatever cause they're interested in. You've mentioned a cause you're passionate about, that you've got an experience with. I'm talking about mental health and baby loss here. I think for the men that have got that, I think it's really important that those men stand up, speak up, and engage and act, because they will help someone. Mate from down the pub, mate they used to play football with, mate from school, they'll be watching. They might not be liking things on your LinkedIn, but they will be watching and they will be listening. And, again, we need to take the pressure off women feeling like they're the ones that have to be emotional support for men. That's not how it needs to be. We are more than capable supporting one another. We're more than capable of talking to one another. And more of that is happening. I just think we're ready to level that up now. I really do. I think we're ready to just forget all these nonsense norms that are still taught. Men don't cry, men don't show weakness. Like, it's 2025. Get rid, it's gone. Yeah. It's over, but it still exists. It still exists, and a lot of men still feel the strength of that conditioning that is centuries old. And for men that have moved through some of that, I really believe it's on us to lead and to take ownership and to create spaces, create conversations, and be the change makers, basically. If you've got 1,000 good men who are willing to lead, step up, create whatever, create campaigns, create groups, men's circles, come on podcasts, makes a huge difference. So that's my call to arms, really. Like, I feel like, rather than putting the pressure on the men that are struggling to open up for whatever reason, or struggling to talk about their health or their mental health, rather than saying, oh, they're the problem, they need to do more. Forget that. What about the men that are ready, and that have got a story to tell, and that have got something to give? What more can you do?
That sounds really inspiring. I'm looking forward to seeing what develops over the next couple of months of next year, with the huge following that you've got with a mental health space. Mental space, there's a great name. and a link to that and what you're doing. James, we've run out of time. I say very unfortunately we've run out of time. We've probably gone a bit over. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thanks for sharing the difficult stories, as well as the really thought-provoking, interesting stories around exits. There's a whole new conversation there that I've not heard before. Really, really pleased that you came and sat down and joined me and unmasked for the men and so many people that are going through what you've experienced. Thank you. And people need to find you. So where do they look you up? You
LinkedIn mainly. So James Routledge on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. Or I write a regular newsletter, which is you can find on jamesroutledge.co. So yeah, those two places.
And Routledge is Routledge.
Correct.
So I'll put it obviously in the show notes so people can see it as well. So we'll find you. Thank you so much. And of course, if anyone wants to come on and sit where James is and talk to us and open up and unmask and extend these conversations even further, then you know where we are. So hello@leadersindisguise.com. Drop me a message. The team will reply, and myself personally. And let's keep opening these conversations up and doing what you've done. So thanks again, James. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.